What if Trump makes Greenland join America? Let's explore the depths of it in the video. Imagine this. It's 2025, the US Capitol, Washington, D.C. The House is in session, and the air is thick with anticipation. The topic? The future of the United States in a rapidly changing world. And Donald Trump wants to talk.
Gentlemen and ladies, of course, we've been talking and talking and talking, and you know what? We're not getting anywhere. We're stuck in these same old debates while the world is moving on without us. Russia's got their resources, China's controlling the supply chain, and what are we doing? Sitting here talking. I don't know about you, but that's not working for me. So, here's the deal. There's a place right next to us, folks, right there, and no one's doing anything about it. Greenland, untouched, empty, no one's even using it. The Danes have it, but they don't even go there. But you know what? We're gonna change that. We're gonna change all that. We're gonna take it. And here's what's gonna happen. We're gonna find so many minerals, so many great minerals, rare earths, everything we need to fuel our economy, to make our cars, our tech, our energy, all of it. It's right there, folks, just sitting there, and we're gonna make it work for us. So here's my offer, $10 billion, $10 billion to secure America. We get Greenland and we take the power. Best deal in the world, best deal in the world. And let me tell you folks, everyone wins. You want to keep sitting here talking, or you want to make America great again? Because the time is now. Let's do this.
How likely is this scenario? And what if it came true? So let's break this down. How can the US realistically annex Greenland? Greenland was once a colony of Denmark. Technically, it's still part of Denmark today. However, the island has significant autonomy, especially in its internal affairs. In fact, Greenland's autonomy is so strong that while Denmark is an integral part of the European Union, Greenland's citizens in 1983 decided to leave it after a referendum. Denmark had no say in that decision. This wide autonomy makes Greenland's status quite complicated. Theoretically, Trump could offer the Danish government a hefty sum to buy Greenland, but the Danish government has flatly rejected that idea. In fact, the Danish foreign minister has said that the US has no right to buy Greenland, and it's not just a Danish issue. It's a matter of Greenland's independence and the will of its people. This, of course, is a double-edged sword. On one hand, it's seen as friendly to the Greenlanders, who have long had issues with Copenhagen's treatment of them. Recently, they've even considered holding a referendum for independence, so Denmark might want to soften its stance to avoid pushing them further away. But on the other hand, by giving the Greenlanders the power to decide, Denmark risks losing Greenland altogether. So it's interesting to note that Greenland's exit from the EU was over a matter of fishing rights, fishing being a crucial part of their economy. If Trump could offer Greenland more favorable economic terms, they might be tempted to leave Denmark behind for the economic opportunities of a superpower much closer to their borders. But then comes the other big question. Why would Trump take on this kind of economic sacrifice? And more importantly, why now? It's not the first time the US has shown interest in buying Greenland. In fact, similar discussions have happened 5 times before, in 1867, 1910, 1946, and 1955, and most recently by Trump in 2019. The most serious attempt came in 1946, when the US offered $100 million to buy Greenland, according to declassified documents. The main reason back then was geostrategic. Having bases in Greenland would provide defensive security and enhance offensive capabilities against the Soviet Union. In fact, the US has in 1951 secured the Pitufik space base in Greenland. Having bases in Greenland would provide defensive security and enhance offensive capabilities against the Soviet Union. In fact, the US has in 1951 secured the Pitufik space base in Greenland, which indeed is the northernmost installation of the US armed forces. Trump has, of course, mentioned these geostrategic advantages, saying that owning Greenland is crucial for US security. But if this has always been the case, and if the US already has a presence there, why is Trump pushing so hard now? Why is he willing to risk damaging relations with Denmark and other US allies in the European Union? Well, the real reason has a lot to do with global warming and the melting of Arctic ice. This is important for 2 reasons. First, it's believed that there are vast resources of raw materials hidden beneath the ice in Greenland, and inaccessible for thousands of years, many of which are critical for the green transition. These minerals could bring immediate investments and economic benefits. Right now, China dominates the extraction of such materials, so the US wants to regain ground. Second, the melting ice caps open up new global shipping routes. Every country with an Arctic border is rushing to take advantage. China and Russia have even teamed up on a project called the Polar Silk Road to speed up transportation in the Northern Hemisphere. Right now, the US only has Alaska to leverage, but acquiring Greenland would massively boost its influence in the region. So, knowing this, Trump will make his move. It's 2 days after the eventful NATO summit where Trump officially asked Greenland for $10 billion. After Brussels, Trump visited Paris, where he had a behind-closed-doors meeting with President Macron. The next day, he met with German Chancellor Friedrich Merz. Now he's in Copenhagen, welcomed by Danish Prime Minister Mette Frederiksen. After a few formalities, Trump speaks.
I assume you've thought about my proposal. What do you say?
Mr. Trump, the Danish government is not allowed to sell any of its territory.
I know, Miss Frederiksen,
he says, dismissing her with a wave.
I've heard it 1,000 times. I'm a businessman. Do you want us to be friends or enemies, Miss Frederiksen? That's what I'm asking.
Mr. President, the relationship between the Kingdom of Denmark and the United States has always been...
I'll stop you right there. You're talking to me now, and I am the relationship. I don't need to be friendly if you don't give me what I want. And between us, Miss Prime Minister, that's what you should want too. Also, I suppose you need the 10 billion, or maybe you don't.
The threat is clear, and the atmosphere is tense. The signs are bad. Neither Macron nor Merz gave her more than 2 minutes the past few days, citing internal concerns. She is alone.
We'll take it. But on one condition. The people of Greenland get to decide first.
I'm not wasting my time for 50,000 natives, Miss Prime Minister. I don't have that kind of time. You do whatever needs to be done. American ships will start boarding American soldiers tomorrow. The rest you can talk to our ambassador. Nice meeting you, Miss... Frederiksen.
In the next days, the deal is closed. It's a swift geopolitical shift, but its immediate consequences would actually be great. Greenland is the world's largest island, yet it has a population of only around 56,000. Its residents are used to a high level of autonomy, as they govern themselves in most matters, while Denmark still controls foreign policy and defense. Importantly, Denmark heavily subsidizes Greenland, around $500 million a year. This money supports public services and the island's infrastructure. Greenlanders would naturally expect that level of financial support to continue. But the big question is, under US control, would it? Would Greenland be granted statehood like Alaska or Hawaii? Or would it become an unincorporated territory like Puerto Rico with reduced legal rights? Regardless of the political status, one thing is clear. Greenland's northern region would become a military stronghold. The US would likely build many missile defense systems and airstrips, transforming the area into something similar to Alaska's military base infrastructure, but with an even more strategic location. Military personnel would be stationed on the island, and satellite bases would be established for surveillance and communications. This military presence would radically change Greenland's landscape and security priorities. This may all sound well, but the international reaction will not be smooth. While European nations might reluctantly accept the purchase, largely because of their dependence on US leadership in NATO, Russia's response would be much more aggressive. With its own vast Arctic border, Moscow would see this move as a direct threat to its sovereignty and security. Russia would immediately dispute the purchase in the United Nations, claiming that Denmark had no right to sell Greenland without the Greenlanders' consent. Moscow would invoke the United Nations Charter on Self-Determination and argue that the annexation is nothing less than imperialism. In this scenario, Russia could count on support from other US rivals, including China, which has its own interests in the Arctic region. The legal battle would soon escalate, with the situation nearing the point of open confrontation. The Arctic could quickly become a militarized zone, with both the US and Russia engaging in heightened naval patrols. Trade and scientific ships would come under close inspection by both sides, leading to an increase in tensions. The global community would watch nervously as the Arctic borders became increasingly militarized. Despite these challenges, it's unlikely that the US would back down from the annexation. The economic and military benefits of controlling Greenland would likely outweigh the diplomatic fallout, particularly given the strategic importance of the region. But while the US would move forward with its plans, the world would be watching closely, especially when it comes to the activities carried out on the island. Of special interest would be its economic activities on the island. So, what exactly will those activities look like? On July 19, 2023, Greenland Minerals, a subsidiary of Energy Transmission Minerals, ETM, based in Australia, filed a statement of claim against the government of Greenland and Denmark. The reason? A 2021 decision by the newly elected Greenland government to cancel an exploitation license. Essentially, a right for the company to explore and mine a region of Greenland. ETM argued that the two governments breached contractual obligations, leaving behind an area with the potential to become a globally significant supplier of rare earths for many decades. The election in 2021 was won by the left-wing anti-mining party Inuit Ataqatigiit, which canceled the license over concerns about uranium pollution risks. But the Trump administration, certainly not known for being either left-wing or anti-mining, would likely reverse this decision. In fact, the US takeover of the government would almost certainly kick off a treasure hunt for the resources beneath its surface, and investors have been waiting for this moment. Back in 2022, a group of billionaires, including Jeff Bezos, Michael Bloomberg, and Bill Gates, bet that Greenland holds enough critical minerals to power hundreds of millions of electric vehicles. So once the US takes over, expect a rush to explore and mine the resources as part of a broader effort to place the US back in the rare earths production game. Now, to understand the stakes, here's the bigger picture. China currently controls 60% of the global rare earth extraction market, and a staggering 90% of the refinement market. They've been leveraging this dominance by imposing export bans on key technologies needed for extracting, separating, and refining rare earths. A US takeover of Greenland could dramatically shift the balance of power in this industry, potentially cutting China out of the equation and giving the US a much-needed advantage. And that's of course not all. Greenland's resources potentially goes beyond just rare earths. The island is rich in other minerals, including gold, zinc, and even oil and gas reserves that could significantly boost the US economy. With Greenland under American control, the US could unlock these untapped resources, offering substantial long-term economic benefits. But the economic impact wouldn't stop at resource extraction. A US takeover would likely lead to large-scale infrastructure development. Roads, ports, and energy facilities would need to be built to support mining operations and military installations, creating a construction boom on the island. This would not only create jobs, but attract private investment into the region, benefiting the wider US economy, especially in sectors like construction, energy, and mining. Tourism would also see a major boost. Greenland, already one of the most spectacular and remote destinations on Earth, would likely see millions of visitors flocking to the island. New facilities and infrastructure would open up opportunities for ecotourism and adventure tourism, creating even more economic opportunities for the region. So who could possibly oppose such a scenario? Well, there are certainly those who would have a lot to say, if asked. The indigenous population and the permanent residents of Greenland. What will happen to the residents of Greenland's population is the most difficult to predict. Greenland is the largest island on Earth, but it only has a population of 58,000. 90% of them are made by the indigenous aaaaaall people. The aaaaaall have inhabited the island for over 4,500 years. They are part of the Inuit family, a group that spans the Arctic from Alaska to Canada, and their deep connection to the land, sea, and natural world has shaped their culture, traditions, and way of life. However, their history under Danish colonial rule has been one of hardship, resistance, and survival. Greenland became a Danish colony in 1721, when Denmark officially claimed the island. As a European colonial power, Denmark certainly lived up to its reputation. The Danish state saw Greenland as a source of resources, and Greenlanders were often treated as second-class citizens to their own land. Denmark's most notorious colonial actions took place in the 20th century. Between 1914 and 1963, Danish law declared the children of unmarried Greenlandic women as legally fatherless, denying them the right to know or inherit from their biological fathers. Needless to say, many of these fathers were Danish citizens. Then, between 1966 and 1970, around 4,500 Greenlandic women were subjected to involuntary birth control, with contraceptive coils implanted without their consent or knowledge. In general, the Greenlandic population suffered greatly under colonial rule. Greenland was finally granted home rule in 1979, marking the beginning of a slow but important shift towards self-determination. Greenlanders were no longer directly controlled by Denmark, but were given more control over domestic affairs, including education, healthcare, and cultural preservation. In 2021, they elected an Inuit party to govern them for the first time. And now, with their hopes for a decent life according to their values and standards just appeared, they will be lost again. The future of the Kalalit people under the US control is uncertain, but it's easy to imagine a bleak scenario where their environment is ravaged, and their land exploited for resources with little regard for their cultural heritage. While the exact outcome is unknown, given Trump's disregard for cultural differences, the first few years are likely going to be marked by hardship, as the indigenous population finds itself caught between foreign interests and the destruction of their way of life. But whether this will concern anyone else if a huge war breaks out is hard to say. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to stay tuned for the next one. What if China actually invades Taiwan by 2027?